Imagine waking up every morning to a last name that practically radiates wealth and power. A name so iconic that it has become shorthand for abundance and privilege in modern history. Now imagine that you carry that name around like an invisible force field, one that grants you immediate credibility in some circles, while simultaneously casting an impossibly long shadow. Everyone you meet already has a million assumptions about you, from your taste in fashion to the way you spend money, and even your political leanings. Wherever you go, you carry the baggage of an entire dynasty, one that almost single-handedly shaped America's financial landscape in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. That is the kind of reality Ariana Rockefeller was born into. She's the fifth-generation descendant of John D. Rockefeller, the man so wealthy and powerful that to this day, he's still commonly cited as the richest person in modern history. And yet, if you search for Ariana, you'll find not an imperious financial mogul expanding corporate frontiers, but a quietly determined woman with an unpretentious approach to life, designing fashion, riding horses, donating her time and resources to philanthropic causes, and doing her best to define herself on her own terms. Like any fairy tale about heirs to massive fortunes, Ariana's story has been peppered with speculation and myth-making. If you merely look at the headlines, you'll see references to the Rockefeller heiress who rides horses, or the granddaughter of America's greatest oil baron turned fashion designer. In a world used to sensational stories, perhaps it feels odd that Ariana has chosen a relatively muted path. Yes, she definitely has the resources to lead an extravagant life, to stomp around in diamond-studded shoes while flipping real estate like a monopoly board. But that's not who she is. For Ariana, the name Rockefeller is at once a blessing and a burden, an emblem of philanthropic tradition and philanthropic expectation, a symbol that can open countless doors, but also closes many minds before they even know her. And so she walks a curious tightrope, balancing old money heritage with modern values, forging her own identity without entirely severing her lineage. To fully appreciate Ariana Rockefeller's situation, you have to step back and consider just how massive the Rockefeller legacy is. John D. Rockefeller, 1839 to 1937, built Standard Oil, which at one point controlled up to 90% of the oil industry in the United States. His fortune was so immense that it practically dwarfed every other competitor. Then there was the philanthropic side, founding the University of Chicago, funding countless medical research projects, and establishing a philanthropic model that would set a precedent for the likes of Andrew Carnegie, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett. The name became synonymous not just with money, but with a certain Protestant work ethic and philanthropic zeal. The Rockefeller family crest of sorts is that wealth should serve a social purpose, not merely be spent on frivolities. Over the generations, the Rockefellers created philanthropic institutions, donated land for national parks, spearheaded major cultural initiatives, and even shaped international relations through the Rockefeller Foundation. By the time Ariana was born in 1982, the family name was so deeply enmeshed in American civic life that people often forgot the complicated tensions that come with inheriting such a colossal legacy. She grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, a place defined by intellectual rigor. Harvard's campus is right there, but also a certain Yankee modesty. Her upbringing was, by many accounts, strict in the sense that it encouraged discipline, study, and the continuous awareness that being a Rockefeller was a responsibility, not a free ticket to indulgence. From a young age, Ariana was taught the importance of giving back. Stories of her ancestors, tales about John D. Rockefeller's business acumen, about how the family shaped entire industries, about the philanthropic milestones were part of her everyday environment. But she also absorbed another crucial lesson from her elders. Don't get lost in the noise of the family name. Contribute. Find your purpose. Don't fail, of course, but do it your own way if you can. Some might think that the golden path for a Rockefeller would be to step into finance, politics, or the boards of vast philanthropic foundations. Indeed, many Rockefellers have done precisely that, becoming bankers, politicians, museum trustees, or influential figures in global think tanks. Ariana, however, took a different route. She found herself drawn to fashion design, a field some might consider far removed from the colossal financial dealings one imagines for a Rockefeller. She also embraced equestrian sports. In these spheres, Ariana discovered that while her last name might open doors, it could also overshadow her genuine talents. People in the fashion world might say, she's only here because she's a Rockefeller. Or critics in the equestrian community might whisper, she's buying her way into prestigious competitions. Ariana could sense those murmurings, but she pressed on anyway, determined to prove her sincerity and skill. In 2011, she launched the Ariana Rockefeller brand, focusing on classic American-inspired designs. Picture well-tailored pieces reminiscent of East Coast elegance, clean lines, tasteful fabrics, a timeless silhouette that channels both practicality and a hint of old-world charm. It's not about glitzy logos screaming wealth. It's more about understated sophistication that you could wear in various contexts, from a garden party to a casual brunch. She drew upon her heritage in a subtle way, referencing the grand old American aesthetic, but not exploiting it. Some fashion insiders admired it. Others brushed her off as another rich girl playing designer. But Ariana was not half-hearted about it. She really delved into learning about fabrics, tailoring, supply chains, and what it takes to establish a brand in a marketplace saturated with celebrity lines. Alongside fashion, Ariana pursued her passion for horseback riding. To some people, equestrian sports might seem like a pastime for the elite anyway, so they brush it aside as a typical rich kid hobby. But Ariana actually worked hard to excel, representing her stables at competitions and training for many hours. The discipline of equestrian events, caring for the horses, learning to adapt your posture and mindset to each ride, mirrors the discipline she was taught growing up. And in a sense, the horse ring is a place where all your fancy lineage and brand name can't help you clear a jump. You either have the technique and the partnership with your horse, or you don't. Perhaps that's part of why Ariana loves it. It's an arena where the Rockefeller identity has little bearing on whether she knocks a rail down or sails over it cleanly. But one can't escape the spotlight entirely when you're carrying the Rockefeller name. Ariana's philanthropic endeavors haven't gone unnoticed. She's been involved with multiple charitable organizations, supporting museums such as the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, environmental causes, and various human rights initiatives. This aligns with the Rockefeller tradition of philanthropic involvement, but Ariana has also voiced her personal convictions, especially regarding climate change. She's been particularly vocal about the responsibilities of companies like ExxonMobil, one of the corporate successors to the old Standard Oil empire her great-great-grandfather founded. Ariana understands the weight of that historical link, and in a bold stance not all of her relatives might share, she has said that the Rockefeller family's legacy should not shield present-day oil behemoths from accountability. She has expressed concerns that ExxonMobil's approach to climate science has been at times regressive or adversarial, and she doesn't mince words about feeling that the family name shouldn't be used as an excuse for corporate misdeeds. One can imagine how that statement reverberated through family gatherings. Not every Rockefeller is thrilled with the idea of publicly criticizing an offshoot of the very company that made their name legendary. Yet Ariana's perspective is that philanthropic tradition needs to be about forward thinking, not simply preserving the old guard for the sake of nostalgia. She might not be working in high finance or controlling family trusts, but in her own quiet and determined way, she's trying to expand what the Rockefeller name stands for in the 21st century: accountability, transparency, personal authenticity, and a more sustainable approach to wealth. Being a public figure by virtue of a birth certificate can be disorienting. Ariana Rockefeller has spoken in interviews about the pressure to never fail, never embarrass the family name, and never appear to overshadow the philanthropic legacy set by her predecessors. Can you imagine a single misstep, say a misguided comment on social media, and the headlines would blare, "Rockefeller heiress sparks outrage"? That's the magnitude of scrutiny she lives under. Yet ironically, she tries to maintain a somewhat normal life. She manages her own social media, responds to fans, and displays glimpses of her day-to-day existence, from stable visits to design sketches. While her name is huge, her personal brand remains more subdued than, say, that of certain other famous heiresses who gallivanted through tabloids in the 2000s. Ariana simply doesn't court that scandalous lifestyle. She's not out crashing Bentleys or throwing champagne-soaked parties in Manhattan penthouses. And that's exactly where the tension lies. The media seems to hunger for a juicy narrative. Maybe they're hoping she'd become the rebellious granddaughter who gambles away her trust fund, or the philanthropic saint who ends world hunger single-handedly. Ariana is neither. She is just a person making her way. Yes, she's privileged, but she's also aware of it. And she tries to direct that privilege toward meaningful areas, like her philanthropic projects, her brand's supply chain ethics, and the fundamental quest to remain true to herself. Still, living in that glass cage of her last name means that she can never truly step out from under the Rockefeller aura. She belongs to a family that's practically American royalty in the sense of name recognition. People's eyes light up or narrow suspiciously the moment they hear Rockefeller. Ariana once said something to the effect of, "I don't have the right to fail like other young people do," pointing out that if she does fail, it's not just Ariana failing, it's Ariana Rockefeller failing. And that's apparently a bigger deal in the tabloids' eyes. She also differs from some of her relatives in that she doesn't usually dwell in the background as a quiet trustee of philanthropic boards. She has ventured onto the public stage a bit more by giving interviews, showing up at fashion events, maintaining social media presence, and wearing her brand's pieces. In the old days, Rockefellers were known for a certain reticence with the press. They'd appear at philanthropic events, but seldom offered intimate glimpses into their personal lives. Ariana has pivoted into a more contemporary approach. In the modern age, if you're building a fashion label, you can't exactly hide from public view. You have to market yourself. Yet even as she steps into the public eye to promote her brand, Ariana tries to do so carefully, mindful that anything she says might be amplified tenfold. This push-pull dynamic reflects the challenges of being a modern aristocrat in a democratic, media-saturated society. In some ways, the Rockefellers helped create the notion of philanthropic aristocracy in America. Extraordinarily wealthy, but philanthropic by default, considered part of the establishment, occasionally dabbling in politics, and always carrying that veneer of refined tradition. But times have changed. The 21st century is a place of influencer culture, immediate social media backlash, and a growing skepticism toward inherited wealth. Ariana Rockefeller stands at the crossroads of these shifting attitudes, grappling with how to honor her ancestry while forging an identity that resonates with younger, more progressive audiences who might see the name Rockefeller and assume old-fashioned exploitative robber baron wealth. It's important, though, to remember that Ariana's approach is, at heart, quite humble. She's far from the only Rockefeller in this generation, nor is she the only one doing interesting work, but she's distinct for her involvement in fashion and equestrian sports and for her candid reflections on what it means to bear such a storied name. We might say she's representing a new wave of next-generation heirs who strive to be ethically responsible and personally authentic, especially in an era of climate consciousness and social accountability. If the old guard standard was exemplified by dinners with top financiers and silent philanthropic board memberships, Ariana's is about actively shaping a brand that emphasizes timeless style over fast fashion trends, engaging with fans or critics alike on Instagram, and encouraging broader discourse on how historical wealth can adapt ethically to a world facing massive inequality and environmental crisis. When Ariana parted ways with some of the more conventional Rockefeller pathways, like, say, going into finance or following the direct philanthropic administrative route, she drew some skepticism. Yet as the years have passed, her brand has endured beyond the initial novelty actor. She's even reported that some of her most valuable lessons in discipline come from training and competing with her horses, a far cry from corporate boardroom negotiations, but at the same time, not so different in terms of learning to handle pressure and developing resilience. In many ways, Ariana's life is a tapestry of these juxtapositions. She's thankful for her lineage, but also tethered by it. She's part of a philanthropic dynasty, but forging an entrepreneurial path. She's a newcomer to fashion, yet recognized immediately because of her last name. The philanthropic side is particularly noteworthy. She's not content to just sign checks. She's the kind of person who shows up at events, engages with the organizations, and uses her platform to highlight causes she cares about, be it environmental preservation or funding the arts. The Rockefeller family historically is renowned for its involvement in cultural institutions like the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Ariana extends that tradition into her generation, but she also infuses it with a personal perspective shaped by her experiences among fashion creatives and equestrian peers. She said that she believes philanthropy should be integrated into daily life, not just something you do as a side project. That means looking for ways to support local designers, encouraging sustainable manufacturing, and even forming partnerships with nonprofits that involve design collaborations or fundraising activities. Occasionally, Ariana's name has been dragged into tabloid pieces that focus on the fairy tale princess angle, where the writer paints her as a naive or rarefied figure living in a castle of wealth. But that's hardly the whole picture. Sure, she's lived a life of immense privilege, with no illusions about that. But she also makes an effort to function in a day-to-day sense without constantly playing the Rockefeller card. If you see her at a horse show, she's more likely to talk about the nuances of jump distances and stride lengths rather than the intricacies of stock portfolios. It's a quiet attempt to exist on the same level as others in her field, though the name Rockefeller always hovers in the background. One revealing moment about Ariana's stance on living up to the family heritage can be seen in her public statements about ExxonMobil. The old Standard Oil was eventually broken up in 1911 by antitrust regulations, and its descendant companies included Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others. The family's relationship with these companies is complicated. Some Rockefellers remain heavily invested in them. Others have divested because of environmental or governance concerns. Ariana has voiced apprehension that companies carrying the Rockefeller legacy, in a lineage sense, should be leaders in addressing climate change, not holdouts. She's aligned with some other Rockefellers who have openly criticized ExxonMobil's alleged obfuscation of climate science. This is significant because it puts Ariana at a public intersection of family history and modern activism. She's effectively saying, I may be a Rockefeller, but that doesn't mean I blindly support the entire fossil fuel industry in its current form. That's quite a stance, especially if you consider that some might label it heretical, criticizing the descendants of the very empire that built her family's fortune. Yet that's her perspective. She believes that real philanthropic responsibility includes acknowledging mistakes or harmful practices that, if left unchecked, can overshadow philanthropic achievements. In many interviews, Ariana's tone is measured. She's not combative. She doesn't come off as the black sheep fighting to tear down the empire. Rather, she appears as someone who respects the philanthropic tradition, respects the wisdom of her ancestors, but also believes in evolving those values for modern times. After all, John D. Rockefeller was known to be an innovator in business, and Ariana's angle might be, how can the family name be innovative in the 21st century when it comes to climate, social justice, and ethical consumer practices? If the older generation redefined philanthropy for the industrial age, perhaps Ariana and her peers can redefine it for the digital and environmental age. It's also worth noting that Ariana is relatively private about certain parts of her life. She doesn't plaster her relationships or daily dramas, if she has them, across social media. She tries to keep the focus on her brand, her sports, and her charitable work, with occasional glimpses into her daily routine, like posting a photograph of her horse or a snapshot of a newly designed handbag. In a world hungry for personal scandal and meltdown stories, her approach is subdued. You won't find a reality TV show called Rockefeller Life, with Ariana parading around the mansion, throwing tantrums in diamond tiaras. If anything, she's said that she wants people to see beyond her last name, recognizing that while she's grateful for what she has, she's a multifaceted human with hopes, anxieties, and aspirations like anyone else. Does she still inhabit a rarefied social sphere? Absolutely. There's no denying that if Ariana needs advice on brand development or philanthropic strategies, she can tap into networks that are out of reach for most of us. She has resources that can cushion her from life's harshest blows. Yet she's also using these advantages in ways that reflect a sense of personal responsibility. She invests in causes and tries to channel her brand's profits into philanthropic activities. She doesn't claim to be a saint, but she also doesn't see wealth as a license to be self-indulgent. That sense of having to justify her existence, especially because so many people know the Rockefeller name, shapes her worldview. She is, in a sense, in a perpetual negotiation with the public. Yes, I'm a Rockefeller, but let's talk about my actual work and values rather than just the fortune. In that negotiation, Ariana Rockefeller represents an archetype of a new class of upper echelon that is trying to walk away from the stale tropes of trust fund kids, either squandering wealth or living a glamorous but superficial existence. Instead, she exemplifies a subdued confidence in forging a personal brand. Her sense of style is not flamboyant. It's timeless. Her approach to public discourse is not to brag about her money, but to speak about the philanthropic traditions in her family and how she can continue them in a new era. She doesn't show up on talk shows proclaiming to have all the answers for the world's problems. Instead, she stands by certain convictions, like the urgent need to address climate issues, and applies them to her personal projects. Still, the path ahead is never straightforward. The more Ariana Rockefeller speaks up on controversial topics, the more she might face pushback, whether from certain family members who prefer a less confrontational stance, or from outside observers who find her convictions insufficient. But if her track record in the last decade is anything to go by, she's likely to maintain that measured stance, neither overpromising nor shrinking into passive compliance. She'll continue designing, writing, donating, and reminding us that beneath the big, iconic last name is an individual forging a life that balances tradition with personal innovation. In the end, Ariana Rockefeller's story is not just about the daughter of a legendary dynasty choosing to pursue a quieter but purposeful route. It's also about the universal dilemma of reconciling one's inheritance, be it money, reputation, or family expectations, with a longing to create a personal legacy. She's not rebelling in any flamboyant sense, nor is she blindly embracing everything that comes with being a Rockefeller. She simply stands in the limelight, like it or not, wearing well-cut clothes from her own label, ready for the cameras, poised in her riding boots if she's about to jump in the show ring, speaking politely about climate issues, philanthropic expansions, or new design ideas, always aware that a single misstep can set off a media storm. It's a precarious dance, but Ariana seems prepared for it, stable in the saddle, so to speak, as she navigates a life shaped both by familial inheritance and the modern world's relentless scrutiny.